I don't know when the dreams began. Maybe they never stopped. Maybe you never left at all. Not really. At first, I tried to ignore them, those hazy nights when you'd show up uninvited, standing at the edge of some forgotten place in my mind, always just beyond reach. I'd wake up breathless, my heart remembering what my logic had already buried. You, the way your voice sounded in silence, the way your laughter curled into my bones like smoke, the way I used to say your name without thinking, as if it belonged to the rhythm of my breath. You still visit me, not every night, but often enough that I know your shadow by heart. Sometimes you arrive wearing the clothes you wore the last time I saw you. Other times you're dressed in pieces of memory, half smiles, old scents, gestures I thought I had forgotten. You never age, you never change. It's like you've been frozen in time, preserved by longing, untouched by the hours I've spent trying to forget. In my dreams, we meet in strange places that feel achingly familiar. A quiet train station at dusk, a hill under a pale sky, a bookstore that only sells stories we never got to live. And there you are, always facing me with that look, soft, knowing, sad. You never say what I wish you would, and maybe that's the cruelest kindness, because if you did, I don't think I'd be able to wake up. There are nights I hope for you, and nights I beg my mind to rest. I've grown afraid of sleep in the way children fear the dark, not because of what's there, but because of what returns. You. And what are you now? A ghost? A projection of grief? Or just the parts of me that still whisper your name when I'm alone? Sometimes I wonder if it's my heart that keeps calling you back. If, in some unseen place, you hear it echo and decide, for one more night, to answer. I never got to say goodbye. Not really. You left with a silence that still rings louder than the words we never exchanged. And every time I dream of you, I feel the weight of all the things I should have said, all the "I'm sorry" that dried on my lips, all the "I loved you" that stayed curled up like secrets in the pages of an unwritten letter. I wonder if you remember the autumn we shared, the way the leaves danced like fire before falling, the way the sky blushed before night took it whole. We walked through it like we were trying to memorize the world. I can still feel the warmth of your hand in mine, still hear the way you whispered stories into my hair. You made the wind feel like a song. You made the silence between us feel sacred. But time has a way of fraying even the strongest threads. We unraveled quietly, like soft fabric pulled too long. No fights, no final scene, just a slow dissolving. And I, foolishly, thought I'd be okay. I told myself the space you left would fill itself with something else, something new. But all I found was a stillness too loud to bear. Now, in dreams, you don't speak much, but your eyes say everything. They carry the weight of unfinished sentences, of moments left suspended. And I talk to you like I used to talk to the stars, hoping you're listening, even if you're too far to respond. You tilt your head, the way you always did when you were about to say something beautiful, but the words never come. I wake up before they do. I think my soul still waits for you. Not to return, not to explain, but to be felt, to remind me that love, real love, doesn't vanish. It shifts form. It lingers in glances, in echoes, in the shape of dreams. It lives in the breath between sleep and waking. Sometimes I wonder if you visit me because part of you is still trying to come back. Or maybe it's just me, still standing at the same threshold, still hoping the door will open, still imagining that on the other side of night, you might be there, waiting. But I know better. I know the world has kept moving, and so have you, wherever you are. Yet here I am, writing to someone who no longer answers, sending words into the quiet, praying they find you or the memory of you. Maybe that's what grief is, a lifelong letter addressed to someone who lives only in our sleep. And if that's true, then this is the beginning of mine. You used to tell me that dreams were secret rooms our souls built when reality became too loud, that when the world grew harsh, we tucked ourselves away into softer spaces. I never understood it then. I used to laugh, call it poetic nonsense. But now, every time I fall asleep and find you there, I start to believe you were right all along. There is a house I return to often in dreams. I never built it, but it knows me. The floors remember my footsteps, and the air hums with stories only we told. You're always in that house. Sometimes in the kitchen, making tea, you never finish. Sometimes sitting on the windowsill, staring out like you're waiting for something or someone. I try not to disturb you when I enter. I just watch, like a ghost visiting the living. But every so often, you turn, and your eyes find mine, like they always did, without needing to search. The moments we spend in those rooms feel realer than the years I've lived since you left. Maybe that's the hardest part, that something so imagined can feel more true than the waking world, that I know the shape of your dream shadow more intimately than I remember the faces of people I pass on the street. Last night, you spoke. That doesn't happen often. You asked if I still kept the letters, the ones you never meant to send, the ones you wrote on napkins, on the backs of receipts, on the inside of your wrists when paper was too far away. I told you I did, all of them, in a box beneath my bed where your voice still lingers on each fold. You smiled, and the room sighed with you. The walls seemed to lean in, like they were listening. I asked you why you keep coming back. You didn't answer right away. You just placed a cup of tea between us, still warm, and said, "Because some rooms are never meant to be locked." That line echoed long after I woke. I laid there, blinking at the ceiling, trying to hold on to the warmth of the tea that never existed. My hands still felt the curve of the mug. My chest still carried your scent, like you'd whispered something into my ribs and it stayed there. There are mornings I wake up angry, not at you, at my own helplessness, at the way the dreams make me miss you in ways the day can't soothe. I go through the motions, coffee, emails, traffic, but beneath it all is a quiet ache, like walking with a stone in my shoe that no one else sees. I wonder if you dream of me too, if I visit you, if your soul has its own secret house, and I'm the ghost who knocks at night. I wonder if you wake up with my name stitched into your breath, the way yours is woven into mine. Some nights, I try to change the ending. I try to stay asleep long enough to ask you why you left, or why it had to happen the way it did. But just as the questions rise, the dream begins to fade, like ink washing off skin, and I'm left with the outline of what I wanted to say, without the courage or time to say it. What haunts me most isn't that you're gone. It's that I never knew the moment when it became final. There wasn't a slammed door or a burning bridge, just silence, just a growing distance I didn't know how to cross. Maybe you were waiting for me to chase you. Maybe I was waiting for you to stay. And maybe in that waiting, we both chose different roads without realizing. Now I'm left with these rooms where we still live, in shadows and whispers, where time doesn't follow rules and love hasn't learned to forget. There's a hallway in that dream house I've never walked down, a door I've never opened. You always glance toward it but never explain. I wonder what's behind it. Regret? Truth? A future we never touched? Or maybe it's the goodbye we never had the strength to say. One day I'll open it, or maybe you will. Or maybe that's what the dreams are for. Not to relive what was, but to prepare us for what we couldn't face when we were awake. I keep thinking of something you once said, that love isn't about permanence, it's about presence. You said it on a night when we both knew time was slipping, and maybe that's why you still show up, because presence doesn't end with absence, because even after you left, you stayed, in some shape, some form, some dream. So I keep writing these letters, not for answers, not even for closure, but for presence, For the version of us that still sits in that sunlit room, sharing tea that never cools, surrounded by words that never run out. And if you ever wonder why I still write, why I still talk to the dark like it's listening, it's because some parts of the heart don't know how to forget. Some doors remain open, even when no one walks through them anymore, especially when no one walks through them anymore. There are dreams that leave the moment you wake up, faint echoes that vanish with the first sound of morning. And then there are dreams like you, dreams that linger, dreams that build homes in the quiet corners of your mind and refuse to leave when the light creeps in. You're not just a visitor anymore. You've become a rhythm, a breath, a scent that stains the air even after the window has been opened. Last night, I dreamed you were in the garden. Not just any garden, but the one we used to talk about building together. You always wanted wildflowers that bloomed without permission, climbing vines that didn't care for rules. I watched you from the distance of a memory, kneeling among colors that didn't exist in the waking world. You were humming something I knew but couldn't name, a melody from the part of me I still keep locked away. You didn't look up, and I didn't dare speak. It wasn't fear, it was reverence, like watching a star burn from too close. You seemed so peaceful, so impossibly whole. And for a moment, I wondered if this was the only place you could still be that version of yourself, where pain hadn't dulled you, where goodbye hadn't fractured us. When I woke, I could still hear that hum. My body felt heavy, like I'd carried the weight of a dream into the day. The air around me still smelled faintly of jasmine and earth, and I wanted so badly to fall back in, to return to that place where you were still within reach. But dreams are cruel that way. They let you taste, but never keep. I wonder if our souls have their own memories, if they hold on to things our minds try to forget. Maybe that's why you keep appearing, because something in me remembers the shape of you, even when logic has erased the details. And maybe something in you, wherever you are, still remembers the way I used to say your name like a prayer. There are days I pretend I'm fine, that I've moved on, that your absence is just another empty chair at a table I've learned to sit at alone. But then, a scent, a song, a certain shade of sky will pull you back into me. And I'll find myself talking to shadows again, whispering apologies to the space you used to fill. People talk about closure like it's something you can wrap in ribbon and tuck into a drawer. But some stories don't end. Some stay open, unfinished, and echo through the halls of who we are becoming. You are one of those stories, a sentence I keep rereading, hoping the ending might change. In one dream, you asked me if I still blamed myself. I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because the question itself was too heavy. I carry blame the way others carry heirlooms, close, inherited, unwilling to let it go. Maybe if I had said one more thing, maybe if I had listened closer, maybe if I had held your hand tighter when you started to drift. I live in a world of maybes now, 1,000 alternate paths where we didn't fall apart, where words came sooner, where time was kinder. But dreams don't care for alternate endings. They simply replay what the soul can't release. Sometimes I wonder what I would say to you if time folded in on itself and gave us one more hour. I wouldn't waste it on questions. I wouldn't ask you why you left or why it hurt so much. I would just sit beside you. I would memorize the curve of your smile again. I would trace the outline of your voice. I would tell you the things I never had the courage to say when it mattered. I would tell you that I loved you in the quietest way, not with fireworks, but with steady light. That I still keep your birthday saved in my calendar, even though I never call. That I still flinch when I hear your favorite song in public. That I forgive you, even though some parts of me never wanted to. That I forgive myself, even though I don't always know how. The dreams are beginning to change. Slowly, subtly, you linger a little less. Your touch feels lighter. The house we meet in has more closed doors than it used to. I don't know if that means you're moving on or if I am. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just the way healing happens, not in sudden clarity, but in tiny, quiet steps. Still, I find myself hoping for one more dream, one more visit, one more version of you who isn't bound by silence. Until then, I'll keep writing. I'll keep building this bridge of words between us, even if it only stretches as far as my own heart. Because some dreams are worth remembering, even the ones that hurt, especially the ones that hurt, because they remind us that we lived, that we loved, that we still do. There is a moment right before sleep takes me, when the world begins to blur and time unties its grip, where I can almost hear you call my name. It doesn't echo, it doesn't shout, it barely brushes the air, like a feather falling inside a dream I haven't entered yet. That's how you reach me now, in that space between awake and gone, in the hush that lingers between words, in the silence between our names. I've started noticing the quiet more, how it stretches longer after I whisper into the night, how it seems to hold its breath with me, waiting for something that never comes. When I say your name aloud, I pause afterward, as if giving the universe time to answer back. But it never does. Not really. Not in the way I hope. Yet somehow I still hear you. Sometimes I wonder if we ever said each other's names in the way they were meant to be said, with the weight of meaning, with the softness of surrender, with the full truth of what we felt. There are names we speak to survive, and names we only whisper when we're ready to break. Yours was both. In one dream, we sat on a bench beneath a sky dripping with stars. I looked over, and you were already watching me. You asked me if I ever said your name just to feel less alone. I said yes. You smiled, and it felt like forgiveness. There are words I carry in my mouth but never release. Not because they're secrets, but because they're sacred. Because once spoken, they would dissolve into something too real, too raw, too much. So instead, I let them rest behind my teeth, curling into prayers I don't know how to finish. I remember your voice, not just the sound, but the shape of it, the way it bent around certain vowels, the way it dropped into softness when you were tired. You used to speak like you were afraid of waking something fragile inside the world. Maybe that's why your silence now is so loud, because I remember what it drowned out. I've tried writing your name in different ways, on napkins, on fogged glass, in the corners of pages I'll never tear out. But no matter how I write it, it still feels incomplete, as if it needs your handwriting to be whole. As if part of it was always meant to be written by you. I don't know why this part hurts more than the others. Maybe because names are anchors, and when yours is gone, I feel untethered. Do you remember the night we traced our initials into the sand? You said the ocean would remember us, even after the tide washed it away. I didn't believe you, but now I think the sea holds more than salt. I think it carries echoes. Maybe that's why I still walk by water when I miss you most. The silence isn't empty. It holds so much. I've learned to listen to it differently. It's where I find pieces of you scattered, like stardust on a blank canvas. And sometimes I close my eyes and just let it speak. Let the quiet fill me until I can almost pretend you're still here. If I could, I would give you my name again, as a gift, as a promise, as a way of saying I haven't forgotten, I never will. And when you hear it, if you ever do, I hope it brings you home, even if just for a moment, even if only in a dream. There's something sacred in saying the name of someone who no longer answers, something holy in remembering what the world tries to erase. I speak your name not for you to return, but so you won't disappear, so you'll know that someone, somewhere, still carries you in every breath. And in the silence that follows, I wait, not for an answer, but for the feeling that comes when I know you've heard me. That feeling is enough. That's what I hold on to now. There's always more I wish I could tell you. Words that stay pressed against my ribs, waiting for a moment that never quite arrives. I think of them at stoplights, while folding laundry, in the stillness between heartbeats. They're small things, quiet things, but they ache louder with each passing day. I wish you knew how much I still look for you in the world, not in obvious ways, not in faces or names, but in the feel of wind on my skin, in the way the afternoon light pools across the floor, in the sudden rush of memory that rises uninvited when I smell your favorite soap. I wish you knew how often the ordinary becomes holy because it reminds me of you. I wish you knew I still talk to you. Not always aloud, but in that space just beneath my breath. I tell you about my day, about the way the rain surprised me, or how the moon looked like a coin tonight. I tell you when I'm afraid, when I'm proud, when I'm lonely. I don't always expect a reply, but sometimes I feel a shift in the air, a warmth, a pause, and it's enough to make me think you heard. I wish you knew how many times I've started to write to you and stopped. Not because I ran out of things to say, but because I couldn't decide where to begin. There's no map for grief like this, no structure for love that lingers past its ending. My words feel clumsy in the face of it, so I let them pile up, unsent, like letters without stamps, addressed to places that no longer exist. I wish you knew that I've grown, that I've learned to carry myself in softer ways. That your absence forced me to become more tender, more patient, more aware of the spaces between people. I wish you could see the person I'm becoming, not because I want your approval, but because I want you to know your love didn't vanish without leaving something good behind. I wish you knew that forgiveness is not a line I crossed, but a path I walk every day. There are mornings when I feel at peace with all that happened, and nights when the same wound reopens with just a single memory. I forgive you. I forgive myself. But it's a forgiveness that breathes and stumbles, that trembles and grows, and still it remains. I wish you knew how much I miss your voice, not the words, but the tone, the cadence, the way you used to pause before saying something important. The way you laughed with your whole body, not just your mouth. Sometimes I replay it in my mind like a favorite song I'm afraid to wear out. It still makes my chest tighten, even now. I wish you knew I've stopped trying to replace you. For a while, I thought healing meant moving on, meant finding someone else to fill the spaces you left. But I've learned that some voids aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be honored. You were not a placeholder. You were a whole story, one that still lives in me, even without a final page. I wish you knew how much courage it takes to remember you fully, to let the memories come without shielding myself, to open the photo albums, to walk past the places we loved, to let the ache in without drowning. I used to run from it. Now I sit with it. And in those quiet moments, I find pieces of you that I thought were lost. I wish you knew you still make me better, that your influence hasn't faded. When I'm kind to strangers, when I choose softness over sharpness, when I listen instead of react, it's because of you. Because I remember how you made people feel seen. Because I want to offer the world a little more of the light you gave me. I wish you knew that some days are still hard, not because I haven't healed, but because love like ours doesn't expire. It changes form. It becomes quieter, deeper, more rooted in the unseen, but it's still here. And some days that weight feels heavier than others, especially when the world moves too fast and I find myself standing still, holding on to memories that no one else remembers. I wish you knew that I dream of you less now, that your visits are fewer, but somehow more profound, as if your soul knows when I truly need you, As if you wait for the moments when my heart begins to falter, and then you come, not with answers, but with presence, with a gentle reminder that I'm not alone, even when it feels that way. I wish you knew how grateful I am, not just for the love we shared, but for the ways you continue to show up, in the cracks, in the stillness, in the quiet magic of everyday life. You are not gone. You've simply changed your shape. I wish you knew that I will always write to you, that no matter how much time passes, no matter how the world changes, I will keep putting words to the ache, keep turning memories into letters, keep sending pieces of my heart into the spaces where you still exist. Because love doesn't end, it transforms. And these words, this silence, this hope, is my way of keeping you close. There's a strange moment after waking from a dream of you when my heart hasn't caught up to the fact that you're not here. My eyes open slowly and the room is quiet, but my chest is still full of your presence. It's like I'm still halfway between the world that holds you and the one that doesn't. And for a second, I believe again. Believe that maybe you were real just a moment ago. That maybe, if I turn quickly enough, I'll find you standing at the edge of my bed, watching me the way you used to when you thought I was asleep. But you're never there. Just the air. Just the soft hush of absence. Some mornings, that's when the ache hits hardest. Not during the dream, but in the aftermath. The remembering. The re-entry into a world that has forgotten your touch, your smell, the curve of your laugh. It's as if everything conspires to move on, to overwrite you, while I am still here, clutching the old draft of us with both hands, afraid to let it go. I think the hardest part of losing you is the part of me that went with you. Not just the shared memories, but the version of me that only existed in your presence. The way I laughed louder, the way I softened at the edges, the way I believed in things because you did. I miss that version of me too. The one who could look at the world through your eyes and find poetry in sidewalks, prayers in the mundane. Who am I now without you? And not just without your body, your voice, your hands, but without the reflection you gave me, without the mirror that showed me someone worthy of staying for. Some days, I try to become that person again, not for you, but for me. I drink the same tea you used to make, even though it tastes different now. I play your favorite songs, and when the chorus comes, I don't cry like I used to. I listen, I remember, I try to make peace with the ache. It's strange how healing isn't a straight line. Some days I feel strong, as if I've made it to the shore of something solid. And then suddenly, I'm back in the undertow, pulled beneath by the sight of a stranger's profile, or a laugh that sounds too much like yours, or a dream I didn't ask for. But I've stopped fighting the current. I let it pull me under, and I trust I'll float back to the surface again. Maybe that's what grief teaches us, that we are made of more salt than we thought, that we can survive the drowning and still carry softness in our bones. There's a drawer in my kitchen you once organized. You said chaos didn't have to win everywhere. I've never changed it. All these years later, the spoons still rest where you placed them. It's a small thing, but it reminds me that you were here, that you left a mark, not just on my heart, but on the ordinary corners of my life. I catch myself doing things your way sometimes. Folding towels into thirds, scrubbing pans with lemon, humming while I cook. At first, I didn't notice. Now, I see them for what they are. Breadcrumbs, pieces of you that stayed, that refuse to fade. And I follow them, even now, hoping they'll lead me back to something whole. You see, I don't want to forget, not ever, even when it hurts, even when it steals my breath. Because forgetting would mean it wasn't real. And what we had, what we were, was real. It mattered. You mattered. Still do. Sometimes I wonder if you ever feared being forgotten, if you knew how deep you'd buried yourself in me, if you ever realized that the way you touched my life was not temporary, but foundational. You were never a chapter. You were the voice behind the story, the pause between the lines, the ink I didn't know I was using. And here I am, writing still. I think that's how I begin again, not by erasing you, but by learning how to carry you differently, not as a weight, but as a thread, a quiet through line that reminds me I am capable of love that outlives distance, that outlasts endings, that reshapes itself into memory and moonlight and soft whispers. So maybe this is where you end and I begin again, not separate, but shifted, not broken, but changed. With every word I write, every tear I allow, every dream I welcome, I become more myself, and in doing so, I bring you with me. Do you ever think about what could have been? I don't mean in the loud, desperate way people often ask that question. I mean in the quiet, in the stillness before sleep. When the lights are off and the only sound is your own breath, echoing back at you like a prayer you're not sure anyone's listening to, that's when it hits me the most. What we never got to say, what we never got to choose. I find myself caught in that liminal space often now, not quite mourning, not quite moving on, just drifting, wondering, holding conversations in my mind with a version of you that maybe never existed, but still feels more real than so many others I've known. Sometimes I ask you things in that darkness. I ask if you knew how much you mattered, if you realized what you left behind wasn't just silence, but a symphony of unfinished moments. I ask if you felt loved, or if the weight of everything we didn't say drowned you before my voice ever reached you. And I ask myself, too, did I do enough? Was I enough? Or was I just a stop along the way to something else you were always searching for? I know I shouldn't need answers. I know this is part of the ache, part of the mystery of losing someone you loved more in memory than maybe even in reality. But the questions still come, soft as fog, sharp as broken glass. I wonder who you would have become if things had been different, if the world had been kinder, if we had met later or earlier, or in some parallel life where timing wasn't such a cruel thief. Would you still laugh the same way? Would your eyes still carry that secret sadness I never learned how to name? There are so many versions of you I never got to meet. The one who stayed, the one who healed, the one who grew old. I grieve for all of them. I grieve for the birthdays I didn't get to celebrate, the arguments we never resolved, the ordinary days that could have made an extraordinary life. I grieve for the smallness of our time together, how it burned so bright and then disappeared before I could hold it with both hands. And yet, I wouldn't trade it. Even now, even after all the tears, even with the ache that still lives behind my ribs like a second heartbeat. Because you were mine, even if only for a while. Because I got to love you in the quiet, in the spaces between the noise. Because some loves don't need decades to matter. They need only a moment, a glance, a breath shared under the same sky. Do you remember that night by the lake? You said you were afraid of deep water, but you stood there with me anyway, toes curled into the edge, staring into the dark like it held the answer to everything. I reached for your hand. You didn't pull away. We stood in silence. And somehow, that silence said everything we never dared to speak. I think about that moment often, about how brave we were, just for being there, just for showing up. I remind myself of that on the days when the world feels too heavy, when the grief feels like a shadow I can't outrun. We showed up, we tried, and maybe that's enough. The questions will always remain. I've made peace with that, in my own way. I've stopped trying to solve them like puzzles and started holding them like old photographs, worn, beloved, incomplete. They don't need answers. They just need to be honored. So I light a candle some nights and whisper to the dark. I ask you questions I know you can't answer, not with words, but sometimes a breeze will brush against my skin, or a light will flicker, or a line in a book will feel like it was written just for me, and I'll know, somehow I'll know, you're still listening. And maybe that's all I ever needed. Not clarity, not closure, Just the sense that you're out there, somewhere, still caring in whatever way you can, still showing up in the only way you know how. I'm learning to let that be enough, to let the questions rest, to let the dark be less frightening, because in the quiet, in the waiting, in the spaces between questions, I still find you. And maybe that's the closest thing to an answer I'll ever get. There's a moment I've been avoiding for as long as I can remember. A sentence I've started 100 times in my heart, but never finished. A truth I keep circling, like a bird unsure of where to land. But I think tonight, I'm ready to say it. Goodbye. Not because I've stopped loving you, not because I've forgotten, but because I've carried your shadow long enough, and I'm starting to realize I need both hands free to move forward. Because holding on to you in the same way I always have means I keep missing what's right in front of me, and you, of all people, would never want that for me. This isn't the kind of goodbye that slams doors or cuts ties. It's not anger or bitterness or regret. It's the kind that feels like the soft closing of a chapter, a gentle turning of the page, a breath drawn not to speak, but to let go. I still remember the last real moment we had. Not the official goodbye, not the one with words and awkward silences, but the last moment that felt like us. We were sitting on the steps outside your building, the sky just beginning to darken. You were talking about something. I can't even remember what now, but I wasn't listening to your words. I was watching the way the light touched your face, the way you laughed without trying, and something in me knew it wouldn't last, knew this was one of those moments you only understand the weight of once it's gone. I've lived in that moment for years, returned to it like a favorite song, replayed it so often that I wonder if it's even real anymore, or just a polished version of the truth I've clung to out of need. But tonight, I feel something shift, not a break, not a sudden shattering pain, just release, like an exhale I didn't know I'd been holding, like a door slowly creaking open in a room I thought was locked forever. I need to say goodbye, not to the love, but to the waiting, not to the memories, but to the belief that they were all I had left. Because I'm starting to see that you don't live only in the past. You live in the way I've chosen to survive, in the way I reach for softness, even when the world is sharp, in the way I keep my heart open, even after all it's carried. You live in the words I write, in the silences I've learned to sit with, in the peace I'm finally beginning to find, not in forgetting, but in remembering differently. You once told me that the hardest part of goodbye isn't the leaving, it's the silence afterward, the space where something used to be. And you were right. That silence has followed me for so long, a companion I didn't choose but learned to live with. I filled it with letters, with dreams, with versions of you that only existed in my longing. But I'm learning now that silence can be sacred too, that it doesn't always have to be filled. Sometimes it's enough to let it be, to let it rest, to let it carry the love we never stopped giving each other, even after the words ran out. So this is my goodbye, not to erase you, but to finally honor you the way you deserve, to stop asking the dream version of you to explain what the real you never could, to release you from the burden of staying just so I don't feel alone. I'll still think of you when the sky turns that particular shade of gold. I'll still smile when I hear a song you used to love. I'll still catch my breath when a scent pulls me back to some forgotten afternoon we once shared. But I won't chase you in my sleep anymore. I won't beg my dreams to bring you back. I'll meet you if you come, and I'll smile. But I'll let you leave when you need to. I won't cling, I won't ache. Because the truth is, you've already given me more than I realized. You gave me proof that love doesn't have to last forever to be real, that even the briefest flickers can leave light behind, that sometimes the most profound connections aren't the ones we live in, but the ones we carry with us. You gave me the courage to feel deeply, to grieve honestly, to heal slowly. And now, I give you back your place in my story. Not as the chapter I couldn't close, but as the one that taught me how to begin again. I'll keep walking forward. I'll keep writing. I'll keep loving. And I'll carry you with me, not as a wound, but as a whisper. Not as a ghost, but as a guide. Goodbye, my love. Thank you for visiting me all those nights. Thank you for staying until I was strong enough to let you go.